Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Giant Pod with me, Andy Wrintmore. My guest this week is James Bartholomew. He is a photographer by trade, but he is also a damn badass beekeeper, and that is why we got him on the pod. We go into all things bees. We talk about their honey, we talk about the wax, we talk about their hives, we talk about their hierarchical system, their matriarchal system, we talk about when wasps attack, we talk about how honey will never go off, we talk about honey's medicinal qualities, we talk about honey's use in wounds, we talk about all kinds of things, and I really have such a newfound respect for honeybees after having had this chat. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this one. I had a blast doing it. And don't forget, I got honey in my beard. Here it is. Hi, it's me, Andy, again. Just want to remind you, if you want to help this show grow and you don't want to spend any money, there's some ways that we can do this free of charge. If you leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, that really helps. If you leave a review on whatever you're listening to this on, that really helps. Like, subscribe, tell a friend. That's really important to tell a friend. If you want to follow us on social media, that also helps. The handle is @TheGiantPod. That's for Twitter and Instagram. That's enough from me. Back to the episode. Enjoy.
So you don't get anything on my honey.
Honey on the old bloody table. James.
Hi, Andy.
James Bartholomew, how are you?
I'm excellent. I'm very well.
Now, James, you are many things, beekeeper being one of them, which is kind of why I've got you here today. But what you do a whole range of things, don't you, in life? I think I first met you using a Victorian camera out. You used to go out in the...
Yes, I did a photographic series on a 10-8 camera.
Yeah.
In black and white, through 'em at night. It's nice to be out at night. Nobody else can see you. You can do whatever you want.
Right. But I'd be often strolling home from the pub at sort of 2, 3 a.m. Oh, gone are those days.
Yeah.
The 10 p.m. curfew at the moment. And there'd be this tall chap with this old Victorian camera on.
Wooden camera
on a tripod under a cloak.
Yes.
And they'd be just stood there for ages. And although I would have had a few jars on board, I still had enough respect for the art to not get in your frame. So I'd end up just sort of standing there thinking, shall I cross the road?
The thing is, Andy, these are probably such long exposures that you wouldn't have shown up anyway.
Insignificant. How long is the exposure on an A10? Is it an A10?
It's a 10-8. At night, it could be over a minute long. Depends what you want to do.
And you're capturing... So if you've got traffic within that frame,
usually not.
Right.
Usually without traffic, because I don't want the streaks.
Well, sorry, I meant sort of hustle and bustle. So if I was crossing the road or someone came past in a car or whatever, how much of that over a minute exposure is actually being captured?
Lights would show up, obviously,
right?
But people walking wouldn't, because they're like ghosts.
Oh.
In this exposure. The other thing I did after the 10-8, which I should have probably done first, is on my camera, there's a firmware called Magic Lantern that allows you to do 11 stop brackets from very dark to very light and blend all of those in high dynamic range, or HDR. So you'd end up with a beautiful full tone picture of something at night, which your eyes couldn't even see with your own eyes. And that's very cool.
Have you not done this yet?
I've done that in color, yeah.
Right.
And I may do it again.
Are you able to, with that camera, are you able to produce those sort of eerie, glassy-eyed Victorian portraits?
With the 10-8, yes, I could. With any camera, you can.
Right.
But don't forget, in the early days of photography, 150 years ago, the emulsion on the glass was very low. So basically, the exposure latitude was very low. You needed a lot of light or a lot of time. People used to have brackets for their necks to do family portraits. They'd have to stand still for several seconds.
Really?
In the daytime, yeah.
So they'd have some sort of a neck brace type apparatus on.
Yes.
That's why they have such a sort of a corpse-like quality.
Well, of course, dead people used to get photographed all the time as well.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a phenomenon I'm kind of glad is over. It's fascinating.
Funeral photography, death photography was a big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who came up with that? Do you know?
Well, when my wife and I went to go visit the grandkids in Sydney a couple of years ago, we did still deaths instead of still lives. We did ourselves dead all over Sydney, which was quite prescient. This was a little bit time before the lockdown and before the pandemic. Yeah, we just had ourselves dead all over the place instead of doing, because there were so many people doing selfies. We thought we'd do deadies instead.
Have you always been a sort of have you always gone the opposite way? Have you always been a sort of a contrarian?
I've always been a bit of a reckless wanderer.
Right.
I'm a photographer by trade because I'm not good at anything else. So that's not quite true. I'm good at many things. I'm a collector of very unusual objects as well.
Right.
And the front door, the front window of my house, as you know, is a bit of a treasure trove, and it makes people stop and look for minutes at a time. Then I come out and sell them honey while they're doing that.
You're quite successful at selling honey.
I do it by word of mouth, but because it's so good for you, anyone with any kind of ailment at all comes running to my door. I have a money-back guarantee on my honey. No one's come back apart from with the empty jars, hoping for a discount. But I charge London prices, my friend.
I know you do.
I charge London prices.
I know you do. I popped over yours one day. I'm not tooting my own trumpet here, but I popped round yours one day to drop off some donation money for something.
That's right.
And I left £9 lighter.
That's right. It was 8 actually. 8 quid.
8. That's right. No, it was because all I had was 9.
Yes.
Sorry, 8. And it was a well spent £8. But I was quite impressed by your technique. Which was just like, you're going to buy some honey then?
If you don't like dogs or come to buy honey, you can't come into our house.
So you used to live in London, I believe. Did you grow up? Did you?
I'm from Boston originally.
Boston,
Massachusetts.
Oh,
I'm a dual national Scots-American, and my dad's from Scotland. My mother was from America. We live back and forth a lot, so I'm transatlantic, really.
Okay, it's because there is a twang in your accent. I just
Boston.
couldn't figure out what it was. But now that you've said that, I kind of hear it.
Yeah.
What's because Boston is almost, I mean, I've not been to Boston myself, but I feel like Boston is more English than quite a lot of America.
It's very much foundation of the Puritan settlers, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, New York, to some extent.
Right.
Yeah.
And why such a, I don't want to use the word nomadic. Would you use the word nomadic? It's not nomadic. No. Why such a bouncer back and forth
They couldn't decide where to live, these parents of mine, that's all. And it's a very, very different mindset. Okay. I remember being in primary school, my first time in London, and all these strange people who were my peers, these kids come up to me and asked me what football's the team I supported. And I said, I don't know. Do you mean soccer? You know, I had no idea.
Yeah.
No idea. So I remember once seeing a big sign on a wall that said, "Take courage." I was on a bus. And in that moment, I thought, wow, if I can be brave, I can do this. It wasn't until years afterwards I realized it was for a beer.
Right.
But I was an alcoholic by that time. Take courage, my friend.
Yeah.
You know?
Wow.
So I left school early, and I basically made my own way in the world. And one of those things is keeping bees, because my dad was a beekeeper.
Oh.
So sadly, he died before I started keeping bees.
Right.
But I tell them about him all the time. You're supposed to talk to the bees.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this good for the bees' mental health?
Bees were seen as a link between this world and the next in many cultures over many ages. So they were thought of as spiritual beings, thought of as being very sacred. A lot of Egyptian gods were associated with bees as well. So, yeah, they're to be treated with a great deal of respect.
And is this through some sort of wisdom? That because they're very integral to our ecosystem. I mean, one of the reasons I have asked you here today is because I know there's so much to learn about bees that I don't know. That's so important and mind blowing that I know that you're going to give me the facts. But I am aware enough to know that, you know, a lot of our ecosystem relies on their work.
Absolutely.
And do you feel that this pedestaling or idolizing of the bee throughout ancient history is because they understood its place in the circle of life?
Bees are the only animal who will store more food than they need. Bees are the only insect who create food that people can eat. Honey is the only food substance that has everything a human being needs to survive. So if you were anywhere urgently, the one thing you would need is a jar of honey.
Really?
There you go. Yeah.
And how long can a jar of honey sustain a human being?
Interestingly, if a bee wanted to have enough honey to fly around the world, all it would need is 2 tablespoons of honey. 2 tablespoons of honey is enough nourishment to get one bee all the way around the world.
Really?
Yeah, that's extraordinary. It's a magic elixir of life, honey is. It is an antibacterial, it's an antimicrobe. Bees are the only organism in the entire world that does not have any pathogens in it. No pathogens of any kind will be sustained in a bee. Part of the reason for that is they have all these microbes, they have all these enzymes and amino acids. They also produce hydrogen peroxide, which is something I know Donald Trump is very keen on. But when he talked about taking bleach internally, all he needed to do was take a teaspoonful of honey. Because honey has hydrogen peroxide in it, which is actually something that wakes up a system in your body to produce good things. Interestingly enough, it's a small amount of hydrogen peroxide, but it is enough that if you were to wash your hair with honey in your shampoo, your hair would go lighter. So Donald Trump, all you need is to eat honey every day. Okay? That's all you need. Whether you elect it or not, just eat honey. You'll be fine.
Just eat honey. And there are different kinds of honey from different varieties of bee.
Sure.
I'm very aware of the fact that, there will be honey that will taste different from region to region.
Yes, that's absolutely true. Manuka honey is one that you might have heard of from Manuka trees in New Zealand. Obviously, that's very specific to that region, and you can only get that from New Zealand. But actually, the truth is that the honey most local to where you live that's produced is the best honey for you, because it has all of the antipathogens for all of the nasty things that have come into your life. So basically, not just colds and flus and snuffles, but everything. People used to put it on open wounds because it takes the water out. It's slightly acidic. No bacteria will live in a medium of honey whatsoever. So in all through the ages, it's been used as a poultice as well as being taken internally.
And how are these properties? How do you find this out?
Internet. I just printed out 12 pages on the bee immune system. Their immune system is so extensive that that's the reason honey can basically stay forever. 2,500-year-old honeycomb was discovered in Egyptian tombs, and you could eat the honey. You had to warm it up first, but you could eat the honey. Very few things will stay active all that time. Grains won't. Rice won't. No other kind of food will basically stay impermeable forever, basically.
But honey does.
Honey does. It's the only food that has no sell-by date on it, legally.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's so exciting. It's so exciting. You talked about different kinds of bees. In this country, there are 267 current species of bees.
In the UK.
And over 20,000 species of bees worldwide. Apis mellifera is a kind of Italian-European hybrid. That's what the honeybee is known as, that we use.
Right.
So I've been a beekeeper for 4 years. Calling myself a keeper isn't really accurate because I don't keep them. They keep themselves.
Yeah.
I just provide a hotel, basically. And they move all the furniture in, and they go to the store, and they get all the food, and they come back, and they do it all themselves. And then twice a year, this big smoking bearded dragon, because I have a smoke gun and a bee suit, on which, by the way, Ghostbusters uniforms were based on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're based on beekeeper suits. Who are you going to call? Bee Busters. So twice a year, I steal honey from them, but I only steal enough that they can have enough to get on with for the rest of the winter. And so, they never say, sod off, we're not going to make honey anymore. They've been doing this for 50 million years.
Yeah.
That's all they know how to do is make honey. and they do it very, very well.
Very well.
Yeah.
So how did you get, I mean, obviously your dad is, like you said, is a beekeeper. And I guess you're following in his footsteps slightly well, not slightly, you're definitely
Well, it just so happens that he was a beekeeper and I'm a beekeeper too.
Right.
I just got really passionate about it.
Yeah.
There's nothing not to love about bees.
When did this begin?
After we moved to Frome, my wife and I noticed there was a Frome Beekeepers Association, and I did a 6-week, one evening a week course with a guy called Norman Elmer, who became my mentor. And I mean, interestingly, there are as many opinions about bees as there are beekeepers. Because some people will tell you, you must do this, and other people will say, oh, you mustn't ever do that. You know.
Right.
I remember I went into a store and I saw you. You said, "Oh, there's a hive of bees in a wall. Go and check it out." And I did.
Yeah.
And they're great. They look really happy. And you know, who's going to bother them? They just go wherever they want. Don't forget, if the hive gets too big in any season, any hive gets too big, and there are too many of them, they just go, sod this, we're off for pastures new. They take the queen.
Yeah.
They take her very carefully to a place that's only going to be within about 500 meters of where they are.
Right.
And they start a new hive, which is great for bees worldwide, but it's bad for beekeepers.
Right.
Because they lose half their hive.
Right.
And then they make a new queen from any cell, from any worker cell. They just feed it raw jelly all the time. It pokes out with a little crown on and a scepter. See, the hive is the closest thing you'll get to an animal democracy. All decisions are made by the majority of the shareholders. It's Marxism in its purest form because the workers are the means of production. They are the production. So if the bees need to swarm and go to a new home, a number of forager bees will go out and scout around. And only when enough of them have come back and done the same dance of the same place where they all want you to go, the rest of the hive go, oh, that sounds good, let's go there. So everything is done democratically.
Wow.
And all the queen does is she's born to look over the hive. She produces between 1,000 and 1,500 babies every single day, her whole life.
Wow.
With the exception about November to February.
Right.
But every day of her life, she can't even go to the toilet by herself. She can't even digest her own food. She's looked after by an entourage of worker bees who only look after her.
How do they digest her food for her?
They regurgitate it just like a mummy bird will do with a baby bird. It's really interesting. So the queen's born. She becomes a virgin queen. She leaves the hive only once in her entire life. Is, shall we say, impregnated by as many drone bees as she possibly can, because that will give her a better chance to have a really healthy colony, won't it? If she's got sperm from many, many different drones, she'll come back and never leave the hive again.
And is this like human reproduction, where it's, you know, one of these drone bees' sperm donations, let's say, will make the cut?
Yes, it is. You never get twins or triplets.
Right.
90% of the bees in a hive will be worker bees. They're female, they're sexless. They do all the work. Sound familiar? They go out, they get all the food, they come back, they cook it, they digest it, they feed it to the babies.
Yeah.
They do everything. The drones, which represent 10% of the hive, all they ever have to do is go out and make queens, which sounds like a great job, except if they're successful, then they die as well.
Right.
So interestingly, at the end of the season, come end of September, beginning of October, when it begins to get colder, the worker bees will say to them, you had one job. Clearly you didn't do it. You are the weakest bee. Goodbye. And they kick them out of the hive.
Right.
And the drones go, oh, all right, I'm off. Goodbye.
And then what do they do?
Then they huddle. They congregate in like a football shape inside the hive. Don't forget, it's very good insulation. Wax is very good insulation.
Right.
So they all huddle around the queen in this thing the size of a football. It's about 10,000 bees over the winter.
And we talking a British football or an American?
It's a British football.
Right.
It's round.
Yeah, round.
Yes.
Okay.
They make hexagonal cells, and they have done ever since they started making honey. It's the most exquisite shape in the world. It's the most perfect geometric shape for making lots of little cells.
And does anyone know why that particular shape?
Yes, as I said,
the efficiency?
it's the most effective way to make cells filled with honey. If it was round, you'd have an empty space. If they were square, you'd have corners. So hexagonal shapes are the most useful. I mean, who was the architect? Buckminster Fuller did all those geodesic domes, they were all hexagonal as well.
It's not my
No.
area of expertise.
I'm just making it up. I'm guessing the name. Buckminster Fuller, that's right.
Right. Wow.
Anyway, you were going to try some of my honey.
Oh, okay, yeah. So we've got, this is a first on the podcast. It's some sort of interactive experience
You have to be honest as well. That one, the clear one, is from September.
Right.
I do 2 extractions. Mm-hmm. This one is the most recent one, and it's still quite liquid.
Right.
It's a little bit thinner than the other honey.
Okay.
All raw honey that hasn't been treated will crystallize in the end. So that's from May. The other one's from May.
Okay. So the date of this recording is October. So this is very fresh honey.
It's a month old, yeah.
Yeah. Right. How are we going to do this with the spoons?
Just
are you diving in on this?
No, you do it. You do it. It's for you.
Okay. All right. Okay, here we go.
So
we've got this clear honey. It's almost an amber.
It's very clear, isn't it?
Yeah, it's beautiful. I can smell it, and this reminds me of the jar that I have at home that I bought. And
it's the same honey.
And I really lather it on. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I really lather it on. It's really good. It's very floral tasting, this honey, if I remember rightly. Okay, here we go. I just try not to.
You need to dip it to turn the spoon, or you'll.
The spoon.
Yeah, that's it.
I don't want to get any on our old equipment.
No, you just did on the chair. I told you to move the spoon.
I got on the chair.
And your beard.
And my beard. There we go. So that's really
Andy.
good. While I get it out of my beard. That might be a good sort of wax. And it's on the chair.
If the chair gets wounded, just put some more on.
All right. Well, we're not going to have this. Is it out of my beard?
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, we're good.
You're gorgeous.
Oh, thanks.
So that's very fresh, but that is the end of the summer.
Right.
We had a long summer, and we had flowers all summer long, but that is the tail end. Try it with this spoon, the May stuff, because you'll find it's a lot stronger.
Yeah, and this
even
one
though
is
the texture is different. No, it's not going to dribble.
Right.
Because it's gone crystallized.
Okay.
So it's still soft, but it's not runny.
Oh, it's a lot softer than I thought it was going to be, actually.
And you'll taste the sugar granules.
Okay.
It's part fructose, part glucose, and a little bit of sucrose. But that's got a very different taste to it, doesn't it?
Mm. Now, I'm not a master chef expert, taste palate. I haven't got the greatest palate in the world. Yeah, 2 very different experiences there. I think I prefer the runny one.
Yeah.
It's just got a little bit more flavour to it, I think. A little bit more of that floral. I don't know, you can sort of taste what they've been pollinating.
Through the summer, they will have had a larger variety of flowers.
Right.
So that's more of a mix. At the end of May, they will have only had clover, a few different crops by the end of May.
And that dictates the taste.
Oh, yes. Rapeseed honey is very, very strong and sets also very quickly.
Right.
But bees go to trees as well as flowers. Don't forget, flowers have trees. Trees have flowers as well.
And how does that affect the taste?
You can sometimes taste very chestnutty, oaty. It depends where you are and what you do with your bees. Don't forget, in America, the almond crops in California are done by bees that are flown in, literally, on flatbed trucks.
Right.
And they're opened out for a week or 2, and all they do is this monoculture, which is actually really bad for the bees. Because, why are you laughing? You haven't got the honey out of your beard.
I'm giggling because I just found some more honey in my beard. I'm so sorry. But yeah, it's going to stay. It's going to stay in there. It's all right.
That's all right.
It's going to be a very blonde patch tomorrow, as you said.
Oh, it'll be fine.
For the peroxide.
So that's a bad thing that people do with bees. They actually cart the bees all over different places to follow specific pollination that can only work by this fashion. What they should really do is to have much more stationary built up colonies of bees and have mixed crops, because if you have monocrops, that's only going to be good for a certain time of the year. Then after that, they've got to fly a long way away. By the way, I have a number of facts about bees, which I think you'd find very, very interesting.
Yeah, hit me up.
One of them is, and I've rearranged this, a bee will fly generally 2 to 3 miles in any direction to get nectar and pollen. But they have flown up, they've been known to fly easily 5 miles or more 5 miles out and 5 miles back is 10 miles, right? If you take a bee and you scale it up to the size of a human being, that's the equivalent of me getting in an ultralight plane and traveling 1,250 miles. 10 miles to a bee is 1,250 miles. All right, 750 there and 750 back. Bees do amazing things.
Yeah.
They also have a number of different eyes, some of which take like a speed camera trap picture every 6 seconds. There was an interesting experiment they did in England and at the same time in Germany. They took 2 sets of bees. One set, they just let them loose. They took them to another place, let them loose, and they came back to the hive they were at, the place they were at. The other set of bees, they took them to a separate place, knocked them out, and then woke them up. And they both came back to the hive at exactly the same time. So they don't even need the sun. They have all sorts of different GPS things that they use to remember where they are. And just to make it easier, every single hive smells different from each other. So they'll come back, and if they're drunk or if they've been out too long, they'll go, oh, this isn't my hive. And they'll go to the next one. But in the summertime, I now have 5 hives.
Right.
And there can be upwards of 60,000 bees in each hive. So in the summertime, there's over 300,000 bees up there.
And I've been
in my apiary.
There.
It's actually the most central apiary to Frome, which is why my beemeister Norman, bless him, he said James's honey is the best in Frome. I could have died when he said that. I was ever so proud. I'm so proud of my bees. I don't do anything. I put on a bee suit. I disturb them as little as possible.
Yeah.
You're supposed to mark the queen with a fluorescent pen, so you can tell where she is. I'm buggered if I can even see her.
Right.
You know, I just let them get on with it.
Yeah.
As soon as it's warm enough, I put a few supers out. Supers are the frames that have foundation wax on it.
Right.
Where they put the honey. So if you put enough supers out, they're not going to swarm because they say, oh, we've got lots of honey. Let's put it up here. Let's put it up here. Let's put it up here. Last year, I got 450 pounds of honey off of 4 hives. This year, I got about 350 off of 5 hives. So it's not a science. It's not exact.
Right.
And I'm just grateful when I get the honey.
And how much has to be spent? Say I wanted to get into beekeeping tomorrow, let's say, forgetting that we're in a, autumn. If I wanted to get into beekeeping tomorrow, what do I need? What is the basic kit? And how much are we sort of talking in terms? Let's do it in pounds.
First thing is you can't do it now. You have to wait till the spring. That's the first thing. First thing is just to decide to wait until spring. And in the meantime, do a bee course.
Yeah.
Do a bee course or befriend somebody who can be your mentor. You need somebody who can help you. To get a hive together, you basically put together a flat pack hive.
Right.
There's one called the National that was invented by a Frenchman in the last century. Up until then, don't forget, certainly in this country and in Ireland and most places, beehives were made of straw in the shape of a round dome. It's called a skep.
Right.
And there were so many bees around that at the end of the season, they'd just shake the bees out over a fire, killing all the bees, and then scoop out all the honey, and then just put the skeps to one side. And next spring, the bees would come and do it all over again. But don't forget that was very popular in the Middle Ages,
right? Because
honey was the only source of sweetener. You didn't have any other source of sugar. And the churches, don't forget, loved the wax for their candles and wax tablets as well. It was very, very useful stuff, the wax was. And of course, the abbots loved it because they made mead and got drunk. So they loved that. You can do all kinds of things with honey.
And how is that wax produced?
They produce the wax from the pollen. They have a substance in their stomach that makes it waxy, basically. And they make the cells. That's all they do with the wax. There's all kinds of different types of food that the bees have. Propolis is another one, which is kind of chemicals from the flower. And they feed the propolis to the babies in something called bee bread, which is something that's been made to ferment. I mean, they're absolute scientists. They know exactly how to do the cleanest thing. They're the cleanest animals in the world. That's why they have no pathogens in them. They're basically the the doctors and nurses. They're the first responders of the world.
Right. And why have they, I assume this is an evolutionary trait.
Yes.
Why do you think that's come about? What is their purpose within the ecosystem to be that? Is sterile the word?
Yes.
Yeah.
Basically, they are handing on a lot of materials from the flower. Not only the pollen, which they use to make the wax, and the nectar, which they use to make the honey, but they actually use chemicals within the plant's structure that mean that they don't need to have as high a defense themselves against pathogens, because they're stealing all this material from the plant world, and they're using this to basically stay very clean. Don't forget, they regurgitate the nectar from one bee to another.
Right.
There's a whole security system in every single hive. If a bee takes in pathogens or pesticides, it won't come back to the hive. It'll be too weak. It won't come back to the hive, it'll die. If it does come back to the hive and it wants to unload its pollen and nectar, it has to do it with a middle-aged worker bee who will take in and partially digest this. So it goes from one security place to another. And even a wasp who wants to come in and steal some of the honey, you should watch them at the hive entrance, at the landing board. There are bee guards who look out for that. Wasps are like kamikaze. They know they're going to die, but they just want the sweetness. So they go in there. some guard bee will go, "Not having you," and it'll be a battle to the death.
Right.
And the worker bee may even sting the wasp, and "You're not having this." Unfortunately, if a worker bee stings you, she'll die, which is very sad.
Yes, and we should probably talk about wasps as well, because they're often considered to be extremely similar.
Wasps are equally interesting to pollinate. They're also very good pollinators. They don't tend to overwinter, though. The thing about honeybees, out of all these different species of bees, is honeybees virtually all the time will overwinter. They'll hibernate. So the same hive, the same bees you see in October, you'll see in February, because they'll survive the winter by huddling together and maintaining their energy when there's no food. And they eat the honey that they've stored. So
what is the wasp? What's the relationship with the wasp and the honeybee?
Oh, well, the wasp wants to steal the honey.
Right.
And so if there are enough wasps and there's a concerted effort, they will actually invade a hive.
Right.
And steal all the honey. That rarely happens. And if you're a good beekeeper, you look out for things like this.
How do you know when is there a telltale sign?
Luckily, it hasn't happened to me, but if enough wasps are at the entrance to a hive, like hundreds of them at a time, then you need to worry.
Right. And what steps can you take then as a beekeeper? Is it just nature now?
I couldn't say from experience because it hasn't happened to me.
Right.
In the first couple of years, I had swarms as well.
Right.
But luckily, in the last 2 years, I haven't had any swarms.
So
they've been very. As I said, a swarm is when a hive gets too big.
Yeah.
There's too many bees in it, and there's not enough space for them. So half of them with the queen will go off and make a new hive. Right. Usually in a tree or a building, or maybe somebody's empty hive if you're lucky enough.
Right. I see. And so you had those for a beekeeper there. They're not catastrophic events.
No, in fact, what happened with I only lost one swarm. The other two I managed to capture in a box. You basically they'll make themselves into a football, a round football, an English football shape, off a branch of a tree. And if they're lucky enough to do that, you're lucky enough. You just take a box and a big stick and you whack them into the box and make sure you've taped it shut. And then about 4 or 5 hours later, you put them in an empty hive. And so that happened. I only bought, I think, my first and my last colony of bees. The other ones I've just got from swarms. So it's like freebies.
They've found
it's
their
freebies. Literally freebies, yeah.
How much do you pay for
you did ask me that.
Yeah. So it's a setup cost.
Yes, a setup cost buying a flat pack hive, which you have to put together yourself with nails and glue, and there's no room for error,
right?
Because bees have to have bee space. They have to have the space of a bee quite a lot of the place around the place. Set you back about 300 quid.
It's not a big investment.
Not a huge. You need a bee suit. That's something else, and you need a smoker, and you need a hive tool. which is like like a crowbar thing.
And what does that do?
It lets you to open the hives because they stick it all around with the wax. So your hive tool basically lets you take the hives apart and look at them.
And you have to, and then you can peek inside, and
you can peek inside.
And
yes.
are they quite well? Are they quite happy for you to do that? Or
They're
do they
generally
get a little bit?
they're generally pretty docile. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, if I'm moving lots of things around, they don't like it.
Right.
But bees are they're not domestic. They're wild animals, but they're very predictable. And in the 1800s, there was in a number of countries, they had a contest with beekeepers to see who could make the most attractive bee beard, which they would do by putting a queen in a cage underneath their chin, and they'd let all these bees grow on their face. Seriously, you would understand this because you've got a very big beard.
Yes.
So you can imagine putting a queen in your beard. You could make the most beautiful beard of bees. And there used to be prizes for that.
It's very funny, isn't it? We do some strange things as humans, don't we?
I think we do, but one of the most beautiful things we've done is to understand what bees do and to have this symbiotic relationship with them. We do tend to, so the number of wild bees species have been declining, but there's been a big increase in people wanting to keep bees. It's very simple. You have to do very little work. They do it all themselves. Some people don't even take their honey, but it's okay to do that. You can even feed them sugar water in the spring and in the autumn, which they'll make into their own honey, which they eat in the off season.
Right. What are the common misconceptions around beekeeping? So say you're in a conversation with someone who isn't, I'm quite open-minded and curious about a lot of things, which is why we're doing a podcast.
Yes.
But there are a lot of people that are very quick to go, oh, what do you want to do that for with many things?
Well, here's one that's a bit of a shame, and that is that vegans generally do not eat honey because honey is an animal product.
Right.
It's a reconstituted animal product. It's been regurgitated by bees, which means that they could say it's bee vomit. So if they don't want to have anything to do with any animals, very sadly, they don't eat honey, which is such a shame because it's amazing stuff.
And you feel that honey is almost like a vegan loophole?
Well, if I was a vegan, I'd eat honey. Put it that way. I'd drink my almond milk, but my oat milk, but I'd eat honey.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the big ones, one of the ones I always think about when I think about your garden, because it's not the biggest garden, is it?
No.
But it's quite lucky to have a garden. Many people don't. But it's not a huge, long, sprawling.
No, they're in the top garden, which has a good landing stretch.
Yeah,
they need a good place to, good few meters to land and to take off. And don't forget, since it's so central to Froome, all they're eating is people's flowers.
Right.
They're not eating any crops. They're eating trees when they're in flower, but they're basically eating people's flowers. So all my friends all around Froome, when they see bees in their garden, they're my bees. I may not be able to tell which ones they are. Naming them is just a real chore, such a chore, and I quite often get them mistaken for each other.
Yeah, I bet.
But there are countries in Indonesia, I believe, where it's a rite of passage for boys to go up rope ladders, up cliffs, and saw off natural beehives so they fall to the ground. In another ritual, you tie basically a spider's web to a bee. And in the sunlight, you can follow the bee more easily because you can see the waft of the string. And you just follow the bee to where the beehive is in the tree. That's what kids do in countries where they want to see wild bees and see where they go. They'll tie a little piece of silk to it and watch it fly away and go capture the honey.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Our relationship across the planet with bees is so different, but it's all...
Well, it's been happening for millions of years, bees have, and we've been cultivating honey for tens of thousands of years. It was used as currency. It was used as bartering. In fact, I barter my honey all the time. I won't tell you what I barter, but it includes services and goods,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, I love it. And the other misconception, I guess, that I think about when I was going to say, because you haven't got the biggest garden, and my point with that was going to be that you must end up having quite a few sort of like stray into your house. Or are they pretty good?
They really don't. They really don't. But there are some legends about bees, and there are some things about bees you need to know.
Okay. I'm all ears.
The whole pharaoh chain of the Egyptian pharaohs for 2,500 years used the honeybee as the royal symbol between 3000 BC and 350 AD. The Greeks believed that a baby whose lips were touched by a bee would become a great poet or speaker.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that.
If a bee flies into your house, it means that someone is coming to visit. If you kill the bee, the visitor will bring you very bad news. So basically, never kill bees. Bees and spiders, just leave them alone.
Yeah.
Several deities are associated with bees and honey: Aphrodite, Vishnu, Pan, Cybele, and Ra. If a bee lands on your hand, it means money is coming your way. Seriously. Bees are associated with health and wealth.
Do you feel this is an evolutionary thing that we've learned because they are so important to the ecosystem, because of the honey that has sustained communities?
Yes,
and
their medicinal use as well.
Yeah.
The NHS is very quick to say honey is the best thing, externally and internally.
Right.
If you have an equal amount of water, vinegar, and honey, and lemon,
right,
drink it, and it will basically kill any pathogen in your body. Seriously, it's excellent stuff.
Right.
It's used as medicine all the time, and it was used this way thousands of years ago. Knights in armor who came back from battle gashed all the way through, they just put poultices of honey. It was honey. It was honey, soot, and lime.
Why
basically.
soot?
Soot for the charcoal.
I see. Because that would be presumably
Carbon.
Right.
Yeah. One thing I discovered recently, and there's a lot on the internet you can look at. What would you mix with honey? Garlic. Put about 12 to 15 really nice big cloves of garlic in a 3/4 pound jar of honey, fill it half full, and put it in your cupboard, and just undo it every day, because it's going to ferment and it's going to start fizzing. And basically, you can drink it, you can cook with it. It's the most amazing stuff. Honey, garlic.
Wow.
Yeah, really good.
It's so versatile.
Yeah, completely.
And have you tried any experiments yourself of things that you haven't heard about, but you've been curious to?
There was something we did, my wife and I, we made beeswax wraps. You just take a piece of cotton and you shave some honey that you've grated. So not honey, wax on it. Put it in the oven under low heat. Bring it out, and it's basically impregnated with the wax, and you can wrap foods with it. That's really good. Making candles is obviously one thing. What else? Mostly it's the honey.
Yeah.
The honey.
Every time you say honey, you
smile
get this
comes
little
to my
smile
face.
on your face, man. You love it.
Yeah, I do.
Tell me about bee stings. That's the other thing, I guess. Oh, when you get stung all the time.
My wife went to the doctor today. She forgot to ask her for an EpiPen, which is unfortunate, because the last time she got stung by 3 bees at the same time in the same place, developed a very adverse reaction. I took her to the medical center.
Right.
They kept a very close eye on her.
Wow.
An EpiPen is basically a syringe full of pure adrenaline.
Yeah.
Do you remember the film?
Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction, yeah.
I knew you were going to go there.
So, but basically, the thing is, you need a prescription for it,
right,
because it's obviously adrenaline, and you can't get it until you've had a bad shock from a bee.
Right.
But she can call. She knows that she's had that experience.
Now,
so
what
beekeepers,
does the bad reaction look like? Because for some people, it's going to be a closing of the airwaves.
Yes, that's basically what it is.
Right.
It's extreme swelling of skin and glands and cutting down the airwaves. Yeah, very bad.
Right. And I actually have never been stung, to my knowledge.
Oh.
And that makes me slightly nervous, because I don't know whether I'm allergic or not.
Okay. Not many people are badly allergic to bees. Very few people are. I mean, the way the world is going, how many people did you grow up with who were celeriac allergic or peanut allergic? Not many people I knew was growing up with were that. These are, I think, modern things that are happening.
Right.
Yeah, I've heard of, I mean, as I said, my wife had very bad reaction.
And is this due to, because you said she had 3 stings.
Yeah.
Could have been more maybe in the same place at the same time. Now, I'm assuming that if you get 1 sting, you know, there's going to be some sort of a reaction.
It's venom. It's bee venom. It is poison.
3, 4,
yeah.
And I guess they'll stack, won't they?
It depends. If you wanted a pure lethal dose, you'd need to have bee stings from several thousand bees at the same time to kill you.
Right.
It's not like a jellyfish or a stingray.
And what about that will be? How will you die? Is that be a cardiac
as
arrest?
you said, we were talking about it's airwaves being blocked off. Very bad reaction of swelling mostly.
Right.
But don't go on about that because it's very rare.
Yeah,
It can be easily treated. Very, very few people die from bee stings.
And
more people die from lightning strikes than bee stings. Seriously.
And I don't. Yeah, like you said, I don't want to dwell on that because I don't want to, because we're here to celebrate bees and your love of bees and learn things. I've definitely learned so much about bees already that I didn't know. And I think, yeah, it's like sharks, isn't it? So his jaws come out.
Yes.
Oh God! All sharks
Don't overreact.
monsters.
There's an English comedian I can't name, but he's done a very good piece on bees. So there's 3 kinds of responding to bees. One is pretending it's not there, and just if I don't move, nothing will happen. One is a wafter who will just go and waft it away, and the other one basically screams and runs as fast as they can the other way. There's no point to be scared of bees.
Right.
They're not going to sting you unless you bug them, basically.
Right. And what constitutes bugging?
Running around like they're going to sting you. You need to chill with the bees. You need to chill.
Be at one with the bees.
If you chill with the bees, they
chill with you.
They chill with you. They hang out.
So I walked past that wall that I mentioned.
They were talking about, yeah.
The other day to you.
They're still there.
I don't know, but I was in the area the other day and I was marching home. I think I was trying to get home to get back here to do some more podcasts. And I was pursued by a bee. And I tell you, it's annoying.
I know. It's happened to me. Come on, it happens to me.
Yeah.
When I steal their honey or when I approach the bees, sometimes the guard bees are a bit over vigilant.
Right.
And it's always one.
Right.
You'll go, sod off. You're not welcome here. I don't want you here. Go away. No, that's not. No, piss off a bit further and a bit further and more. All right, maybe that's far enough. Yeah, you don't want to argue with a bee,
right?
Really?
I love the idea that he's way above she is way above her station.
Oh yeah,
like you're this huge, massive. You know,
I don't want you here.
Get out.
No, get out.
Bye. Goodbye. And like you're walking away as her doing. I love that idea. Get out. What are you doing? That's right. I said further. A little more. Come on. Yeah. Bragging about it back at the hive. Yeah, well, I said, you don't want to be around these
That's right. That's right. You should have seen him. You should have seen the size of him. All I did was whisper in his ear. Sod off. I'll get you.
That's great. Yeah, but I was stalked by it.
Yeah, it does happen.
And it was just a bit, it just put me on, because I'm like, why are you so interested
You'll
in me?
know a bee with attitude. They're unmistakable.
Yeah.
They're bee with attitude.
Just checking me out for like ages.
I know.
And it was, I think I even had a moment where I was like, whew, and someone from across the road looking at this massive, giant, bearded Viking-esque thing, man.
Yes.
Flapping his arms around, get out my face.
With a beard like yours, you don't want to get a bee stuck in it because then there would be trouble.
Oh, man. What's this I hear about maybe this is wasps. If you were to, say you swat a bee, so you're watching the TV and you've got a bee buzzing around and you swat it, some sort of pheromone or some sort of thing is sent out into the ether and the hive knows to.
I think that's a bit far-fetched. They do live on pheromones.
Right.
They can smell pheromones very, very all over the place.
Right. Flowers,
each other. Yeah, who's to know?
Because I heard that if you kill one, it's probably an urban legend, but let's dispel the myth.
They'll all come back.
Then they'll come and get you. because they know that, man down, medic.
Yeah, it's woman down.
Woman down. Sorry, I keep saying man
Yeah,
down. So they're a matriarchal society.
They are.
Right. That's fascinating.
The drone bees are useless.
Yeah.
They're completely useless. They don't have a sting. They can't feed themselves.
Yeah.
They can't gather nectar or pollen. They can't forage. They're really big, but they don't defend the hive. They're completely selfish.
Right.
They're men. They're completely selfish. Take complete advantage of the women just to go and bonk as many females as they can. And at the end of the season, they're gone like the dust in the wind.
Hit it and quit it.
I know, hit it and quit it. So they either make out with the queen and die, or you get killed. You go out by the end of the season.
Do you think there's points in making out with the queen? Do you think there's some sort of within their societal structure? Is there some sort of like?
Well, like I said,
if
a queen, a virgin queen, will go out with all these pheromones, saying, "I'm a virgin queen. I want to be mated."
Right.
That's all the drones are born to do.
Right.
And in terms of the DNA widening of the gene pool, the more different drones she can have sex with in those 1 or 2 or 3 days, that's what she's supposed to do. She's trying to get 10 million sperms in this little sac inside her, which she drops out 1 a day for the rest of her life.
Wow.
It's incredible. So, yeah, the more males she can mate with, A, the more sperm she has, and B, the bigger the gene pool.
It's like a orgy.
It's one big scientific experiment, and bees are the most effective animals in the world for doing what they do.
What do you know about these nanobot
It was a Black Mirror episode.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you think that? I think I can't tell if they're real or if it's science fiction stuff that keeps popping up. And do you think that's the healthy way to go to boost or prop up what's considered to be an ailing bee population?
98% of all wild species of bees have gone in recent years. It's really, really tragic. Bees have been declared the most important species on the earth. In the most recent meeting of the Royal Geographical Society in London, Earthwatch Institute just this January declared bees the most important living species on this planet.
That's amazing.
Recent studies show a dramatic 90% decline in the bee population in the last few years due to deforestation, pesticides, lack of flowers. Bees are also titled the most important being on the earth because 70% of the world's agriculture depends exclusively on bees.
And we have 2% remaining.
Well, we have a lot fewer bees remaining.
Right.
Einstein said, if the bees go, we've got about 3 years, and then we're gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, what do you know what that looks like? Say we wake up tomorrow, your hive is empty, everything's gone. Click, they're gone. What does that look like? It's a decay over 3 years, I assume.
Well, the species of fruits and vegetables that depended, and trees that depended on pollination by bees would die. They would just die because that's the only way they are reproduced by bees, obviously. And don't forget, it's taken, flowers 150 years ago. They were saying, ooh, let me develop this beautiful color. Let me develop this ultraviolet thing because bees can see in ultraviolet. Let me put this lovely odor out. And let me put this little sweet stuff in the middle of my flower. Did you know that when a bee approaches the flower has a slightly positive electrical charge?
No.
And the bee has a negative charge flying through the air. And before the bee actually hits the flower knows that the bee is coming. It boosts its positive electrical charge. The pollen flies off the flower by electrostatic charge onto the bee before the bee even gets there. If that isn't a natural orgasm, I don't know what is. The flower is so happy to see the bee, it's throwing the pollen at the bee before the bee gets there. It's incredible. Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Bang true. And flowers are positive, bees are negative. It's a zap. It's a little spark. Yeah.
That's amazing.
It is. There's nothing about bees that isn't amazing.
Right, yeah.
They're just magic.
And this is exactly the kind of stuff I was hoping to get this evening.
That's good. And you like the honey?
I love the honey.
Yeah.
The honey's great. Yeah, I love it. I've always loved honey.
It's interesting if you look at the lexicon of the English language, honey is always something. Now, you call your wife honey.
Yeah.
You don't do that when you're mad at her, do you?
Well,
maybe
so
when you're
if you
feeling guilty, but
get a little bit of attitude. Honey, come on, let's not. Honey, really?
Sweetness.
But generally, yeah.
Honey is something very nice.
Yeah. And again, it's part of whether it's subconscious or via some sort of evolutionary importance. You know, nature is telling us something about bees, isn't it? When we use honey and, you know, things like that, it's reinforcing on a subconscious level, isn't it, that this stuff is important. This stuff is good. We need this stuff.
We depend on the bees more than they depend on us, because the bees don't need us. They've got their own flowers. They've got their own trees. They've got their own places to live. If we just didn't pesticide the whole place, if we didn't pollute the whole place. I mean, this year I was actually expecting to get a lot more honey because of the lack of particulates in the air from trains, planes, automobiles, buses. It was very good.
During lockdown.
And the honey does taste very clean this year. But there's never going to be anything bad in honey anyway. That's why it lasts forever, because it's so good. It's got so many antibacterial, anti-bad things in it. It's the best thing you can eat.
How much honey do you have in your diet?
That's a good question. I have my honey in tea. I have my honey in coffee. I have my honey on cereal. I've been making garlic. I'm going to make chocolate from honey as well. But also the honey that we use is the cooked honey. It's not specifically cooked, but after I've taken all the cappings off the honey.
Now what's
okay, when you're extracting honey, I bought one. It's got 9 different frame places in it. So you put 9 frames of honey that is uncapped on both sides. Basically, it's about 2 inches thick.
And what is this? Some sort of like sheet thing?
Yes,
that goes...
it's you put when you're starting out, you have foundation, which is just a flat piece of beeswax with little indentations of hexagons on them. Right. They build out the honeycomb on both sides of that.
Right.
So at the end of the season, when it's full of honey, you basically take a sharp knife and you cut off the ends of the honey where they've sealed it, ends of the wax. You put them in, you centrifugally spin it.
Yeah.
And it takes a long, long time, but it basically comes down and you put it through a couple of metal filters, and that's all you do. Then you put it in jars.
What do you use to centrifugally spin it?
It's an extractor. It looks like a great big butter churn, basically. It's made of metal, and it's got gears on it, and you just basically spin it. It takes an awfully long time, but it comes out a spout at the bottom.
So how was this done in the Middle Ages and in times of when we didn't have precision machinery?
Sure, like I said, they would collect the honey in skeps
in the wicker
baskets.
Yeah.
The end of the season, they'd shake the bees out and kill them, which was actually a good thing for the bees because it got rid of the older ones and the diseased ones. There were so many bees in the wild, it didn't matter. And so many people were doing it. If you were any kind of a family or a household, don't forget there were no supermarkets up until very recently. If you didn't grow your own food, you'd starve. Yeah. If you didn't have any bees, you wouldn't have any honey, any sweetness of any kind.
Yeah.
You know, it's great for ailments as well. But so virtually every house that would have a hive or two. And in Ireland, there are ancient honeybee rites which go back hundreds and hundreds of years. And the laws were very specific, which said that if you rescued a swarm from a neighbor's field, you had to give them half the honey. If you rescued a swarm on common land, you had to give a proportion of it to the town. It was very carefully measured out because it was so valuable.
It's incredible.
And don't forget, in the church, before you had wax candles, the only way to make any light in a church was through tallow. Tallow candles are animal fat. It's smelly, oily, really smoky. The flame you get from a beeswax candle is clean and bright and sweet smelling. And the church wanted to fill their dark, cavernous churches with some kind of light, didn't they?
Yes.
To manipulate and, basically hoodwink the population. We won't go there.
We could go there.
We could go
I mean, I'm happy to go there. I'm an atheist. Christopher Hitchens.
You swear to God you're an atheist?
But yeah, no, it's just what's not to love about bees, really.
Nothing.
This has completely changed I already wanted to change my attitude from the growing, because growing up, I'd see a lot of things on TV that were sort of sensational, like I'd see reenactments in like these cheesy Channel 5 salacious reenactment stories of like, and he was killed by 20,000 wasps, and then it shows that basically I just couldn't see anything and I had wasps all over me, and and it's all this.
They're always American, aren't they?
It's always like I was on the porch, and then next thing I knew I was on waking up in hospital, and 3 weeks later, and it was a bee attack.
Yeah. But Andy, a tree is going to fall on your house before you get stung by bees, really.
But this is the attitude I've been trying to dispel.
Basically, don't be scared of getting stung by a bee. If you are stung by a bee, you'll know it because it'll hurt, but in a kind of stingy way, not badly like a wasp or a horsefly. Right. Now that's a real sting that will really, really hurt. If you've ever been stung by a horsefly, you know about it. A wasp or hornet is the next strong one. And a bee, the thing that happens when a worker bee stings you is the bee mechanism, the stinger, has a pump in it. So it will continue to pump the bee venom under your skin. It's got a barb in it. Right. You actually need to pull out the little tiny stinger.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, it will be worse for you. Yes.
I saw a video the other day of a guy wearing a pair of like Timberland worker boots, whatever, and a bee had decided to sting this boot. Yeah. It's kind of got a leathery, I guess to a bee it's
sting
a leathery.
The boot?
Yeah, it's like a leathery skin-like finish on the boot. And I'd never seen this before, but the stinger was in there and the bee was sort of shuffling away. And there was like a tether between the back of the bee and the stinger.
That's its intestines,
And it was that pumping the...
Yeah, there's a pump in the end of the stinger which continues to pump the poison into your skin. And you can't take it out easily because it's barbed at the end.
Right.
But yeah, just think of the bee. Forget about you, think of the bee. Bee's going to die.
And a bee sting's something you get used to as a beekeeper?
Definitely. Just now I gave them some Apigard, which is mostly made of mint, wintergreen. It's a herb. Right. And it basically prevents varroa, which are mites that live on the shell of the bee. Bees will last between now and next spring. So I've just put a layer of this stuff, which is quite natural, underneath the bee excluder, the queen excluder. So right in the middle, at the top of where they actually live in the brood chamber. And taking them apart a little bit, taking their roof off.
Right.
Yeah, I would expect to get stung a couple of times by these overactive guard bees.
Yeah.
And if there's half a dozen of them going, oi, no, piss off, no, now. I mean right now. I mean bang, sting. You know, they're pissed off.
Yeah.
Because you take their house off.
But that's a good thing. It just shows that the hive is working as it should. Right?
Yeah, it shows that they have their instincts. They're gonna protect their hive at all costs.
Yes. Are there any cases where a hive acts strangely and doesn't act as it should, or they're
not triffids? They don't move. The hives stay where you put them. They don't grow legs.
No, but I mean, what I mean is like, is there ever a moment where in beekeeping where you think, there's something not quite
there's all
right
kinds of
about
things.
this.
No, there's all kinds of things that they do.
Right.
In the summertime, they get very hot. Bees need to be about 90 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about like us, Right. So that's quite hot. But if it's really hot, like 95 or 100 degrees in the sun, don't forget, the wax is almost melting in there. So they'll go out and they'll just pour over the landing board like a beard. It's called bearding.
Right.
So they'll do that when they're really, really hot. And they'll also... if they're going to swarm, they kind of make a big cloud before they do that. But generally, when I'm doing things to their hive, a lot of them will come out the front going, "Oi, what's going on?" Don't forget, there's tens of thousands of bees at any time in the hive. The worker bee that you see gathering the forage is at the very end of about 15 different jobs that she's had to do.
Right.
And only when she's at her prime of Miss Jean Bee, can she go out and be a forager? Oh, finally, they let me out of the hive. I'll travel as far as I can. And don't forget, when the other worker bees who come back, they'll tell the bees that are leaving not only where the honey is now, but by the time they get to it, where it will be then, which is just amazing. And that's called the figure of 8 dance.
Right.
And a bee will tell other bees exactly how much honey it is, where it is, how to get there. So by the time a bee leaves a hive, it knows exactly where it's going.
With the dance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what do we know what all the dances are?
Yes, it's a figure of 8 dance.
Yes.
And the actual shape of that figure of 8 will say how much honey it is, what direction it is, and how far away.
So so perhaps a tighter figure of 8 will mean one thing, and a broader, longer.
I have to say, I don't speak bee. I'm afraid I don't speak bee. I almost speak dog, but I don't speak bee.
If you could speak bee, what would you say?
I would say thank you. I do all the time.
Right.
I told them I was coming tonight. I said they're going to be famous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They really are.
Nancy and Susan were particularly excited.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
It's so hard to keep their names apart, to keep them apart from each other. I get confused with them all the time. It's quite embarrassing.
Do you name the queen? Because that's an easy one, isn't it?
Queen.
Just queen?
Yeah, just queen.
Not Queenie?
Not Queenie.
Queen.
No. And I try to bother the queen as little as possible. When you're taking frames out of the brood chamber, don't forget, you could accidentally squash a queen.
And then what happens then? Then you have to make a new one?
Then they say, sod it, there's no queen.
Right.
We have to make a new queen.
Right.
And they'll take a worker bee and they'll feed her exclusively on royal jelly, which all worker bees get for the first 4 days, but after that they're fed on pollen and bee pollen. But only a queen gets fed on royal jelly. There's a Roald Dahl story called Royal Jelly.
Right.
It's one of his short stories, and husband and wife have for a very long time been trying to have a baby. Finally, they do have a baby, and the father is feeding her royal jelly, and she begins to get this kind of furry stuff on her skin, and it's quite creepy.
I get the sense that you really look forward to diving in and doing your beekeeping maintenance.
Yeah, I wish there was more of an excuse to interact with them.
This is what I was going to say. Is there days when you're like, God, I just kind of want to play with them?
Well, no, but what I do is I just go watch them. I just go and watch them. Particularly with the wasp attacks. One wasp at a time, it's just great to see. Because the wasps go, you can't see me, you can't see me, you can't see me. Here I am, and bang. And then a guard bee goes, no, you're not coming in. No, you shall not pass. Yeah. They're so busy and so industrious. It's also, I think, the religious and spiritual aspect of bees is because they ultimately work for the benefit of others. If you think about the pollination they do,
right?
They're just doing it for their honey.
Yeah.
But any hive will produce 2 to 3 to 4 times the amount of honey they need. So you can easily take some.
And you were saying something to me the other day about the creation of paper. They create paper with their
wasps will do that more.
Oh, wasps will do the paper, right?
There's somebody else. I don't do wasps. I do bees. No, but
did you not tell me this the other day, or was that someone else?
I think somebody else did. You're speaking to so many interesting people.
I said, I must have said,
wasps
I've got a guy definitely about bees and stuff. And
but wasps make paper nests.
Right.
Yeah. If you'll see them in a tree or in a cavity in a wall, it's generally paper because they don't make wax. Bees have wax. That's why they make everything in wax. It's perfect. And that's why they can survive -0 temperatures outside the hive because they're all busy beating their wings and keeping themselves warm inside the hive. They do it all by themselves. They do everything all by themselves. Nobody ever tells a bee, okay, you're to do this, you're to do that. I mean, maybe they do tell each other, and the other thing is, no bee is actually saying, "Sod this, I'm going off and getting drunk." They just do what they're supposed to do.
Right.
There's never any any rebellion, because if there is a rebellion, they take the queen with them, you see.
Yeah.
So no bees are ever going to, I think the drone bees basically get away with murder, literally. They don't murder, they get murdered.
Right.
But they get away with doing sod all, nothing, just so they can inseminate a few queens.
Have you learned anything about our human societies from watching bees?
Yes, I've learned quite a lot about patience. I've learned about watching. I've done some slow-mo videos of my bees, which is fascinating.
Right.
Really fascinating. Their wings beat at 180 times a second, which is faster than hummingbirds. No, I'm making that up. Hummingbirds will go faster.
Right.
But just pick out any fact about a bee and it will blow your mind.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
They're all stunning.
They are.
I want to end on drunk bees, because you've referenced this twice now and we haven't talked about it. Tell me about a drunk bee.
It's a myth. There's no such thing as a drunk bee. Drunk bees could only get drunk by drinking mead, and abbots and friars do that. They do feed fermented bee mold to their babies, and that's because it's got so many enzymes in it. It's healthy bacteria, lactose and things like that. There's no such thing as a drunk bee. It could be drunk on sugar and pollen. When they come back, they have lots of pollen in their pockets and they're ever so proud.
Yeah.
They just come back. But they're selfless. They do everything for the good of the hive.
This is what I thought you meant. I thought that they could get to such a point where they've gorged themselves on so much pollen. That,
they have a great time.
They have a bit of a...
Every flower they go to, it's a kiss of life.
Right.
It's a sacred interaction. They do that all day. It would take thousands of bees, hundreds of kilometers of flight to make 1 kilo of honey. And in her whole lifetime, any worker bee will only produce about 1/12 of 1 teaspoon of honey. So that's why you need 60,000 of them to make lots more honey.
That's great. I think that's it.
Okay.
I think that's it. Unless you had other facts that you wanted to get out there. I know you've got many sheets of prepared material here, and I wouldn't want any of this to go unaired, let's say.
Yes, I think the interesting thing about honey is it's the one food substance that contains all of the substances needed to sustain human life, including enzymes, water, mineral, and vitamins. So when the hard times come, make sure you know where your local beekeeper is and be prepared to trade and barter for it, because honey will always last in value. You will always want honey. There you go.
Amazing.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, James.
Thank you.
It's been a real education.
Good.
It's been great. Thank you so much.
I want you to start keeping bees too.
One day.
Think about it.
One day, maybe.
Okay.
I'm not adverse to the idea.
Good.
But do you think bees are not for people with commitment issues, are they?
It's okay, because you don't need to do very much. You can basically get a hive and leave them. You don't really have to do anything.
Right.
Or you get somebody else to do it. I would do it.
So that's what you can do if you really want to help out the old bee.
Yeah.
It's just, if you've got a big enough bit of land,
buy
a few hives.
Get a couple of
hives. Do they
hives.
need shelter overhead?
They have their own shelter.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
you can
as
put
long as you
beehives anywhere.
As long as you keep those hives in terms of their structure and their materials healthy and not rotten and whatnot, then you can really help out the old bee.
You certainly can.
By just dropping 300 squids.
Yes.
And setting up a beehive at the bottom of the garden.
You would never look back.
Never look back. Nice. I love it. We're going to end it there. Thank you. Big thank you to our guest this week, James Bartholomew. You can check out links to his honey and his beekeeping pages and his photography work in the show note descriptions. Please like this, leave a review, subscribe. You can follow my antics on Instagram at Andy_S1S. This podcast was produced by the very busy bee, Harry Williams. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next week on the Giant Pod. Goodbye for now.